The wintertime blues. Now, we're in the middle of a cold snap here in Florida, and I think it feels like about 40 degrees outside. And man, this has been a very warm year here in Florida. My first time living here. And man, it was averaging about 80 degrees every day. And then all of a sudden, winter time is here. You get up in the morning. I got to take the dog out, little Ace. And it is extremely cold. And you're like, whew. And I can't even find my jacket, the jacket that I've been wearing for the last 2 or 3 years that I like. It's like, I like that jacket. I don't like I have a couple other little jackets. I know I like my windbreaker, black windbreaker, right? So I'm getting up in the morning and I'm taking the dog out. I'm like, hurry up, Ace, hurry up. You know, the wintertime blues. You know, there's something about winter that sometimes, man, sometimes you can kind of get inside your own head, and you know it can lead to depression. And you know, it's important because the lack of sunshine in your life, and the lack of the ability to comfortably go outside and get a little exercise and a little fresh air can kind of lead to that. But what else do I think about when I think about winter? And I thought about it this morning. You know, I get up in the morning. I don't have a plan as to what I'm going to talk about. I don't have this, you know, these charts and, oh, I'm going to talk about this on this day, and here's my script. I don't have a script. I go off of my memory alone, and I can think about some of the coldest gigs that I've ever played. And I think maybe the coldest one I ever played, I was playing with the band Trick Pony. And this is very early, you know, in my getting my gig with that band. And then we had the original singer. It was Keith Burns on, you know, guitar, and Ira Dean on bass, and Heidi Newfield was the lead singer, you know, original lead singer. And so we're playing this gig, and we go, it was like middle of the day. And I forget what town, but it feels like maybe it was Indiana or somewhere like that. And the gig was playing before a race. It was a speedway. And they had put a stage, you know, somewhere near the speedway. And our job was to play before this race. And so we're out there. And man, it was like, I don't know if it was like 5 degrees or 10 degrees or something like that. It was just brutally cold. And it may have been an October morning, you know, it may have been something like this, or maybe it was a February or something. You know, better planning would have said, hey, it's February. Let's not book a band to play outside. But we had to play this outside gig. Now, what do? What happens to your hands when it gets cold? I don't care if you're 20 years old or you're 30 years old or 40 or 100 years old. Man, playing in the cold is something else. Now, there's something also to know about as far as keeping your instrument in tune. Weather can make a big difference in how your strings, how your guitar reacts. Of course, you could have truss rod issues. You know, I found that if the closer you get to the equator, sometimes the more you might have to adjust your truss rod. And but man, something about the cold will make your guitar strings go sharp. if you're in extreme heat, they'll go flat. Now, the interesting thing is if you're playing in a band with horns, it's the opposite for them. So the heat will make the horn go sharp, but the cold will make it go flat. So if you're playing in a band with horns, you're both getting thrown off by the weather in opposite directions, which, if, let's say, I'm thrown off a little bit by the weather, and not too bad, but enough. But then the horns are getting thrown off in the other direction. All of a sudden, you've taken what was a little bit of discretion with your tuning, and now it's been double, because they're both moving in opposite directions. And as the gig goes on, those things will magnify. And so that is something where you think God must have had a sense of humor to have that happen. But going back to playing that Speedway and it being like 5 or 10 degrees, I mean, just brutally cold. Now the loading in of the gear, we had a couple of road crew guys that got the stuff placed so that all we had to kind of do was get out there, plug things in, turn them on, get our tone and all that. But man, I'm out there and I think I had some gloves. Fortunately, I think I had some gloves. And so I'm putting on the gloves and I'm trying to keep my hands in the gloves every second that I can. And even with your hands in the gloves, when it's like 5 or 10 degrees, and the cold just cuts right through them, man. I think what I had was work gloves. Because that's one thing, if you're gonna go on the road and you're not in a what we call white glove service band where you have your own tech and you just waltz out there and they hand you an instrument and you play and then break a little sweat and then hand the guitar off and most of us will never get a chance to be in the top echelon of tour acts where we don't have to do anything. You best have some work gloves and some ones with some something in them to protect your hands and and maybe keep them warm. But these work gloves were not keeping my hands warm. But I've got them on, and okay, we're gonna do a sound check. So you got to take the gloves off. And I think we played one song and you're just like struggling. Your hands just freeze up and you can't play what you want to play, what you are supposed to play. This Trick Pony was very much a gig where we played everything note for note. There wasn't any stretching out parts or any places for any, loose jams or anything like. There wasn't any breakdowns where I could, work the guitar. It was very much we're playing, hit songs, and this is the solo, and oh man, it's a really well written solo, and it's actually sounds like something that I would probably play. This is probably something like what I would play if I'd have played on the record. So you're literally out there freezing and you're struggling to play. And I think we did, as far as the sound check, we did the bare minimum, 1, maybe 2 songs. And the guy said, screw it. Get back on the bus and wait till it's showtime. And so, or maybe, and I'm really starting to feel like I think we had to stand out there until they got the guys off the bus. And it was time for the show. And so, the Ira Dean and Keith Burns and Heidi Newfield come out and take the gloves off. And I think it was a mini set. I think it was maybe 30 minutes or maybe 40 minutes. And man, you're just playing this show and your hands are they're just frozen. Now, I have the kind of hands and skin that they don't react well to cold weather. They get dry, they get cracked. And man, to the point where they'll bleed. My knuckles will bleed, all of that. Always had that issue. It used to be worse when I was a kid. But that's another thing, man. One of my buddies out there on the road with Colt Ford, Paul, he would always travel with like a little tin that had like some kind of balm or some kind of salve that he could put on his hands to keep them in good condition. And if you're playing in cold, man, moisturizing the hands so that you'll still have it. I mean, your fingertips can get cracked. You get those little places in your where your nail meets your skin, and then it cracks. I used to get those all the time. And so keeping some kind of moisturizer, keeping some kind of salve or a little jar of Vaseline or something, just to be able to keep the hands in decent shape. But man, we got out there, we played in that cold, and man, I know I sucked. I know I was sucking my way through that and doing my best to try to play stuff. But man, the guitar's going way sharp, and I'm constantly having to tune between songs to get it, into pitch. And then everybody else's guitars are going haywire. And, my hands ain't working right. And the drummer's hurting. He's hurting because every time he hits, it's like the impact of your joints and everything, man. It's just something about cold weather that is it's the wintertime blues, baby. Now, that's not the only cold. I played a lot of gigs in the cold. I remember one time playing a wedding in Nashville. And it was, one of those gigs where we had to play in somebody's backyard, some rich guy with a mansion, some rich guy's, house. And it was like, I think it was November, just like it is now. And it was cold. It gets cold in Nashville in November. Not always, but sometimes it gets really cold. And this was one of those times. And, better planning would suggest that, let's not do this in November. Let's wait till it warms up, or let's do it a month or two before that. But no, we're set to play this rich guy's daughter's wedding. And we're at this mansion, and he has decided it's outside. And they basically put a tent up with open sides, so the wind, the cold is all coming there. And they put a few of those round, like gas, like kind of like heaters that are on a mount. And they put like 2 or 3 in the tent, but none of them near the band. And frankly, with the sides of the tent open, they don't do anything anyway. And this is very much the later period of playing these kind of things in Nashville, where, you don't drink on the gig. Nobody drinks on the gig. And, you only eat the food given to you, at the time that it's given to you, so there's no like, oh man, maybe I take a shot of whiskey to feel like I'm warming myself up, or maybe on the break, maybe I eat a little something more to try to keep warm. And we're playing this gig, and these people they're all buzzed beyond, and they're all dancing and having the time of their lives, and we're up there just, it's cold. And I know our singer, I always said cold was her kryptonite, because man, she was bundled up and cut a thing on her head, and wearing like pants with like some kind of like snow boots, just trying to stay warm. And when it's cold, man, she very much just, all right, let's get through this gig. Normally she would put on this, incredible show and performance and dancing and doing all this stuff. And man, these people, like for instance, some of the guys had to do a jazz set. We had a jazz trio. So they had to play at the beginning of the night. Well, the rest of us were sitting in the green room, which is really just like their breakfast nook that they had given us some food in. And we finished the food, and like the guys are gonna go play the jazz trio. And I'm like, well, man, let's stay in. We'll stay in here and get warm. Well, we're sitting there, and they're like, you guys have finished your meals. You'll have to leave now. So I had to go stand in the cold, not playing. At least when you're playing, you are generating some heat. So then I'm having to stand in the cold and freeze, waiting for our chance to play. Now, you know what? I was very thankful for the gig, and I was thankful to be working. But sometimes, man, sometimes people that you play for are not very considerate or very nice. And, over the course of the evening, they were extremely imbibed. We were not. We were freezing to the point of, by the end of the night, I could barely feel my toes. My toes were like frostbitten in my shoes. And they're vaping in front of us outside, just blowing clouds of smoke, drinking, and we're up there like, man, will these people can we just call this? Like we played 4 hours, and we eventually ended the night and packed up as quickly as I could and got the hell out of there. But man, playing in cold is not the optimal situation, and it can often lead to the winner